At my husband's funeral I received a note. I'm alive. Trust no one. I stood beside a coffin that held a stranger's face under a veil of polished mahogany, while grief pressed against my ribs like a secret trying to escape. But the truth didn't arrive in a whisper or a memory. It arrived folded into my hand by someone I never saw. 6 words in my husband's handwriting. 6 words that cracked open the world I thought I knew, and dragged me into the shadow of the life he never told me he lived. The morning of Marcus's funeral began with the kind of silence that doesn't belong to grief, but to dread. The sky wore a muted gray, the kind that seems to dim the edges of everything it touches. Even the birds stayed low, quiet, waiting. The air tasted faintly of rain, as if the clouds couldn't decide what to do with themselves. I understood the feeling. I had been undecided for days, about my tears, about my questions, about the strange hollowness in my chest that refused to shape itself into mourning. Our bedroom still carried his cologne in the corners, faint and stubborn, like a memory refusing to leave. I had kept the window closed since the day he died, not because I wanted to preserve anything, but because I feared the moment the scent would be gone. Scent is honest, it doesn't pretend. Unlike people. Unlike funerals. Unlike closed caskets. I walked through that familiar room slowly, touching things without meaning to. The watch he left on the dresser, the tie he never wore because he said burgundy felt too loud, the book he started but never finished. Every object seemed to ask the same question I hadn't dared to answer. Is he truly gone? The house felt heavy with unfinished conversations. Marcus had always been a man who moved in a hurry, toward deals, toward dreams, toward decisions that he always insisted were for the good of the family. He believed progress was a kind of morality, that forward motion could redeem whatever shadows trailed behind him. I had learned to live beside that motion, to match it when I could and to hold the home steady when I couldn't. Yet in the days since his death, the house had fallen still, as if it were waiting for someone to admit it wasn't just grief haunting the rooms. Something else lingered. Something unsaid. Something wrong. I dressed slowly, pulling on the black dress hanging at the edge of my closet. It fit differently now, tighter around my ribs, looser at the waist, as if grief had rearranged my shape overnight. My hands trembled when I clasped the pearl necklace Marcus had given me for our 10th anniversary. He'd said pearls were like promises, made in darkness brought into light. But pearls can also crack if pressed too hard. I wondered which ours had been. At the bottom of the stairs, Jasmine and Caleb waited. My stepchildren, 30 and 27, polished grief on their faces, practiced arms around my shoulders, rehearsed sympathies spoken with the dull precision of people who had already cried enough in private. Or not at all. I couldn't tell anymore. Ready, Mom? Jasmine asked softly. The word Mom floated between us like a leaf caught in a confused current. Some days it felt warm. Today it felt cautious. Caleb stepped forward to take my hand. His grip was firm, steady, the grip of a man who wanted control in a place where control had slipped through his fingers. He looked just like Marcus when he was determined, and just like him when he was afraid. I reserved the black sedan, he said. Figured it was better for everything. Everything. The funeral. The will. The company. The cameras waiting outside his father's office building. The rumors circling Marcus's empire like vultures that smelled a wounded animal. Yes, I murmured. Everything. We stepped out together into the cool morning air. The street was too quiet. Even the neighbors who usually hovered at the edges of tragedy, offering casseroles for comfort and gossip for dessert, had withdrawn today, leaving the world strangely hollow. The sedan waited at the curb, polished to an unnatural shine. Its doors gleamed like obsidian. The driver nodded respectfully, avoiding eye contact the way professionals do when they sense a family divided by more than grief. As the car pulled away, the city slid past the windows in washed-out colors. Shops opening, people rushing, life going on without Marcus Hale, the man who had once believed the entire world pivoted on the axis of his ambition. Jasmine sat beside me, hands folded neatly in her lap. Her nails, painted a soft mauve, tapped anxiously against her thumb. Caleb sat up front, eyes forward, jaw clenched. They had both loved him, each in their complicated ways. But love doesn't always look the same. And loss doesn't always mean the same thing. The cemetery appeared at the end of a long stretch of road lined with sleeping trees. Pale, brittle branches reached toward the gray sky as if asking for something that had already been taken. When we arrived, people were already gathered. Black clothes, bowed heads, murmured condolences floating through the air like cold breath. The pastor stood near the polished coffin, hands clasped, ready to deliver words that had been said too many times before. But none of them knew what I felt. None of them knew I had woken up that morning with a question pinned under my ribs. None of them knew that grief wasn't the only thing filling my eyes. The moment my heels touched the gravel path, a chill ran through me, not the kind given by weather, but the kind that rises when something unseen prepares to reveal itself. I walked toward the coffin, toward the man I had loved, toward the man who had kept so many things from me. The casket gleamed in the muted light, far too heavy, far too final for a man who had always walked away from endings. As the pastor began speaking, I felt the brush of fabric against my hand. A soft, deliberate touch. Not comforting. Intentional. A small folded paper slipped into my palm, pressed by a hand I did not see. I froze. My fingers closed around it instinctively. The pastor's voice faded into a distant hum. The air thickened. The world narrowed to the space between my fingertips. Slowly, with the caution of someone stepping across a thin sheet of ice, I opened the note just enough to see the writing inside. The handwriting I knew. The loops he always made on his lowercase y's. The heavy pressure on the downstrokes. The unmistakable way he signed his M. I'm alive. Trust no one. Not even them. A tremor went through my spine. That was his handwriting. Marcus. The man in the coffin. The man whose soul we were supposedly returning to God. My breath hitched. My heart slowed. The world tilted, until the only thing holding me upright was that note in my hand. I'm alive. Trust no one. And just like that, grief became something else entirely. The note's edges dug lightly into my palm as I stood there, frozen in the middle of my husband's funeral. A quiet wind brushed past my dress, lifting a loose strand of hair across my cheek, but even the breeze seemed hesitant, as if afraid it might reveal the secret now pulsing through me. Around me, mourners bowed their heads, some touching their cheeks with soft tissues, others murmuring memories about Marcus, as though he were a chapter that had simply reached its last paragraph. But the note in my hand insisted the book was still open, pages still turning, truth still writing itself behind my back. Jasmine touched my arm. "Mom," she whispered. "You okay?" Her voice was gentle, but her eyes scanned my face too closely, tracing every tremor, every flicker of shock. She always studied people that way, seeking out weaknesses like she was readjusting a mirror to catch their truth. I swallowed hard and forced my shoulders to loosen. "Just emotional," I managed. Caleb stood slightly behind her, hands clasped in front of him, his expression unreadable. He looked tired, dark circles beneath his eyes, lips pressed together as though holding back something heavier than grief. Perhaps he was. Perhaps they both were. Not even them. The words on the note echoed in my chest, tapping slowly like a knuckle against a locked door. The pastor continued speaking, his voice floating gently over us like a blanket laid across a restless body. Marcus Hale was a man of great ambition, deep generosity, and unwavering devotion to his family. The words curled strangely in my ears. Ambition, yes. Generosity, sometimes. Devotion, only in ways that didn't require confession. My fingers tightened around the note. Devotion doesn't end in messages like this. Devotion doesn't rise from a coffin in handwriting that trembles with urgency. Devotion doesn't vanish behind lies and darkened corners of truth. No, Marcus had not left devotion behind. He had left danger. My gaze drifted slowly across the crowd. People dressed in black stood like chess pieces arranged in perfect lines. Some familiar, some forgotten, some strangers who smiled politely while hiding calculations behind their eyes. Marcus had built a powerful business. A legacy that attracted friends easily, enemies quietly. Deals that glimmered on the surface often had shadows beneath them. I had ignored those shadows, convincing myself that every man with ambition carries a little darkness just to find his way forward. But now, as I watched these faces, I felt each gaze land on me with a weight that hadn't existed before. If Marcus was truly alive, one question rose like smoke. Who here already knows? The pastor gestured toward me. The pastor gestured toward me. Grace, would you like to say a few words? My stomach tightened. I felt Jasmine's fingers slip around my arm again, supportive on the surface, but her grip was too firm, almost eager, as if she wanted to keep me rooted right where she could see me. I took a breath and stepped forward, clutching the note so tightly it became part of my hand. The coffin gleamed in front of me. The man inside, whether Marcus or not, lay in stillness that felt borrowed, forced, wrong. I looked out at the crowd, each pair of eyes reflecting a different version of Marcus, the businessman, the father, the husband, the philanthropist, the man whose charm filled rooms and whose silence sometimes frightened me. Marcus, I began, my voice trembling at the edges, was a complicated man. A few people shifted uncomfortably. In funerals, people expect praise wrapped in softness, not truth wrapped in thorns. But I had no intention of delivering either. He loved deeply, I said, worked tirelessly, carried more weight on his shoulders than he ever admitted. That was true, painfully true. But he also kept things close, too close at times. He protected us, sometimes by telling us the truth, and sometimes by hiding it entirely. I caught a flicker of something on Roth's face, Marcus's longtime business partner. A quick, sharp tightening of the jaw. He stood in the third row, tie perfectly straight, expression carefully neutral. Another flicker came from Lang, an old friend of Marcus's whose smile never touched his eyes. He leaned slightly toward Roth, as though bracing for a storm he hoped would pass. Jasmine's hand tensed on my arm. Caleb shifted behind her. I continued softly, but even through his secrets, I believe Marcus wanted one thing above all, safety for his family. Safety for those he loved. My voice cracked slightly. Not from grief. From truth. I stepped from grief. From truth. I stepped back. Thank you. The pastor nodded kindly, resuming his sermon. But my pulse thudded in my ears, drowning his words out entirely. The ceremony moved like a slow tide, unavoidable, inevitable. As they began lowering the coffin into the ground, Jasmine's breath hitched. She reached for Caleb's hand. Tears formed at the corners of her eyes. A genuine moment, perhaps. Or a rehearsed one. With the note in my palm, I no longer knew how to separate truth from performance. When the coffin touched the bottom, a soft clunk echoed up from the grave. My body stiffened involuntarily. Was that the sound of finality? Or the sound of a lie settling deeper into place? After the final prayer, as people began to disperse, a woman brushed past me. I didn't see her face. Only a black hat, a veil, and the faint scent of roses. She didn't speak, didn't pause. But a chill ran across my spine, as though something in her presence recognized the secret clutched in my hand. When I turned back, she was gone. Jasmine looped her arm through mine. Please, she murmured. Let's go home. Her voice trembled. Her eyes shone with tears. But Marcus's message echoed louder. Trust no one. Not even them. I nodded, but inside something tightened, a wire pulled taut between suspicion and truth. Because the moment I stepped away from that grave, everything inside me shifted. I was no longer a widow. I was the carrier of a message. A keeper of a secret that might have been slipped into my hand by the last person I expected. Or by the only person I trusted. And the closer we walked to the waiting sedan, the clearer the truth became. I wasn't leaving a funeral. I was stepping into the first chapter of a life Marcus had never prepared me to live. Night settled over the house with an eerie quiet, as if the walls themselves were waiting for me to make sense of the message burning a hole in my pocket. Funerals usually bring an exhaustion that sinks into the bones, the kind that wraps grief in heavy blankets and forces you to sleep whether you want to or not. But I didn't feel tired. I felt sharpened. Like every nerve inside me had woken up after years of sleeping through secrets I didn't know I was living beside. The moment the door closed behind Jasmine and Caleb, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The house creaked softly, the way it always did at night, but now even those familiar sounds felt different, like whispers adjusting themselves in the dark, like truths shifting to make room for new ones. I stepped out of my shoes and walked slowly toward Marcus's office. The room that had always felt like the chamber of his mind, organized, locked, meticulously sealed from the parts of life he didn't want to share. The door was half open. It had never been half open. A chill slid down my spine. In all our years of marriage, Marcus kept that room pristine, private, curated like a museum built for one visitor, himself. His desk was always neat. His pen always aligned perfectly with the folder at its side. His chair always pushed in at the exact angle he preferred. But tonight something felt off. Subtle but wrong. The chair wasn't aligned, pushed back just an inch too far. A detail no one else would notice. But I had spent 27 years noticing the details Marcus didn't want anyone to see. My heartbeat climbed into my throat. Someone had been here. Recently. I stepped inside. The air smelled faintly of cedar and printer ink. But beneath that, something else. A trace of perfume that wasn't mine. Soft. Floral. Crisp. I closed the door gently and moved around the desk. His computer had been shut down, but the screen bore a faint set of fingerprints across the top left corner. Someone had touched it. Someone who wasn't careful enough to hide it. Someone who wasn't careful enough to hide it. I knelt beside the chair and touched the carpet. The fibers were bent in the wrong direction. Someone had leaned heavily on that spot. Either Jasmine or Caleb had come here. Or someone else entirely. The house hummed softly. Wind brushed the eaves. Somewhere outside, a car engine murmured past. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't need to. Marcus and I had shared something beyond marriage. A rhythm. A subtle choreography of two people trying to fit their truths inside a house too small to hold them. I knew the shape of his habits. I knew the weight of his caution. And I knew, as surely as I knew the sound of his footsteps, that he would never have left his office like this unless he was trying to tell me something. I approached his desk. The lamp sat askew, angled toward the far corner of the room. That was new. Marcus hated asymmetry. I flicked it on. The light fell in a perfect diagonal, right onto the floorboard beneath the credenza. My breath caught. He had done that once before years ago when he wanted to show me something without saying it aloud. When he wanted me to find what he didn't dare speak. I knelt beside the floorboard. Pressed gently. It lifted. Inside, a small black notebook lay hidden, its cover worn at the edges, its pages bulging slightly as if it had swallowed too many secrets and could no longer contain them neatly. My hands trembled as I lifted it into the light. Marcus's handwriting filled the first page. Sharp. Heavy. Focused. If something happens to me before I can explain, start here. One page at a time. Slowly. Do not skip. Do not assume. And above all, trust no one. I sank down against the desk, the weight of the notebook in my lap like the weight of a second heartbeat. Outside the office door, a floorboard creaked. Soft. Light. Not the house settling. Someone was inside. I held my breath. The shadow in the hallway shifted. Slow steps. A familiar rhythm. Then, Jasmine's voice, barely above a whisper. Mom? Are you awake? Her tone was soft, but something in it held an edge. An eagerness, maybe. A searching. I closed the notebook silently and slid it beneath my sweater, flattening it against my ribs. Yes, I called back, steadying my voice. Just thinking. She appeared in the doorway, her silhouette framed by the dim hallway light. Her mascara had smudged from the funeral, but her eyes were too alert for someone who had been crying all day. I couldn't sleep, she said. I keep thinking about everything. About Dad. About what happens now. I offered a gentle, practiced smile. It's a lot to hold. She stepped closer. Do you need help with anything? I saw the office light was on. I thought maybe you were looking for something. Her eyes flicked to the desk, then to the floorboard, then to my hands. Too curious. Too calculated. No, I said softly. Just clearing my mind. She hesitated, searching my face, then nodded slowly. I'm here if you need me, she murmured. But the way she left, the glance back, the careful closing of the door, told me something with chilling clarity. Jasmine wasn't checking on me. She was checking whether I had found something first. And the house felt colder for it. The door clicked softly behind Jasmine, but the echo lingered longer than it should have, settling across the room like a thin layer of frost. I waited until her footsteps faded down the hallway before allowing my shoulders to drop. The notebook pressed warmly beneath my sweater, its weight anchoring me in a reality I hadn't chosen but could no longer escape. Silence filled the office again, heavy, attentive, almost alive. The kind of silence that feels like it's listening. I stood slowly, careful not to anything else in the room. If Jasmine had been here earlier, and my gut said she had, then she'd return. Maybe not tonight, but soon. People hungry for answers always circle back. I turned off the lamp and stepped into the hallway, closing the office door with the same precision Marcus always used, quiet but final. The corridor stretched ahead, lined with framed moments from a life that felt suddenly distant. Vacations, birthdays, holidays where smiles felt real and time felt generous. I paused at one photograph, Marcus holding Jasmine and Caleb when they were teenagers, standing on the pier during our beach trip. I remembered snapping the picture, the sun catching the edge of his grin, the ocean roaring behind them like applause. How many of those moments were real? How many were the beginning of the lies he now expected me to untangle? I touched the edge of the frame, and for the first time the warmth in my chest wasn't grief. It was a quiet resolve sneaking its way into my spine. I walked to my bedroom and closed the door. Locked it. Turned on the lamp and sat on the bed, letting the notebook rest in my lap. The cover felt rough beneath my fingertips, worn down by a man who had handled it more than he meant to. Marcus had always been disciplined, structured. He preferred digital documents, encrypted USB drives, cloud-based files protected behind layers of security. A physical notebook meant something different. Something darker. Something personal. I opened to the next page. In his unmistakable handwriting, a single line waited. Start by remembering who I became, not who I pretended to be. Beneath it, a date. 6 months before his death. 6 months before everything began unraveling. The page below held a list of names, some familiar, some foreign, some crossed out with heavy strokes that tore slightly through the paper. Roth. Lang. Vincenzi. A name I didn't recognize. R. Another. A Hale. R. Another. A Hale. My blood ran cold. Hale. Our last name. Hale. Someone in the family. I swallowed, reading the note beneath the names. One of these people has already chosen survival over loyalty. One of them is using the others to bury me. If something happens before I move first, you'll know which one by how quickly they run toward my death. I pressed my hand against my forehead. My breath came shallow, uneven. Jasmine and Caleb had been eager, too eager, to move forward with the arrangements. The closed casket. The rushed funeral. The insistence on meeting the lawyer immediately afterward. The questions about the company before the soil had even settled on the grave. One of them is using the others. I closed the notebook. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs. A soft sound broke through the silence. A faint rustle, fabric sliding against fabric, in the hallway. I froze. Someone was near my door. I slid the notebook under my pillow just as a shadow paused beneath the crack of light at the bottom. A gentle knock. Barely a tap. Mom. Caleb's voice. Low. Cautious. Too cautious. I steadied my breath. Yes. Can I talk to you? I hesitated, then stood and opened the door just enough to see him. He stood in the dim light with his hands in his pockets, shoulders stiff, eyes restless. He looked like Marcus in moments of quiet desperation, when he wanted something but feared what it might cost. I didn't wake you, did I? He asked. No, I replied softly. What is it? He glanced down the hallway before stepping closer. I wanted to check on you. Today was hard. You seemed shaken during the service. Shaken? He'd noticed. Or he'd been watching to see if I had found something. I gave a small controlled nod. It's a lot to take in, it from one foot to the other. I know. And with everything happening around the company, things are complicated. Uncle Roth keeps calling me, asking questions about Dad's files. I felt a flicker of heat in my chest. If Caleb was talking to Roth, then he was deeper in this than I thought. Questions like what? I asked, keeping my tone light. Contracts, he said. Offshore projects. Money transfers. He says Dad left things messy. Messy. Marcus was many things, but messy was not one of them. What did you tell him? I asked. Caleb hesitated too long. I said I didn't know anything. Which is true. Another pause. Mostly true. Then he looked directly into my eyes. Mom, did Dad hide things from you? From us. The question was loaded. a doorway he was trying to peek through without exposing the room behind him. I met his gaze with a softness that felt foreign, rehearsed only seconds before. Your father kept parts of his life separate, I said quietly. But he always thought it was to protect us. Caleb's jaw flexed. He nodded slowly. Too slowly. Right, he murmured. Yeah, that sounds like him. Something flickered across his face. Not grief, not anger, but fear. Not of losing his father, but of losing what his father left behind. He stepped back. If you need anything, he whispered, I'm here. I nodded. Thank you, Caleb. He walked away, but his footsteps didn't feel like comfort. They felt like someone retreating after checking whether the door had been unlocked. When he vanished into his room, I closed my door gently and leaned against it, pressing my hand to my chest. Marcus had told me to trust no one, not even them. Now I understood why. Secrets don't destroy families. The people desperate to keep them buried do. I returned to the bed, slid a line that felt like the beginning of the storm. When the time comes, you will know which hail to fear, and which one was only ever trying to save you. I exhaled shakily. 2 children, 1 truth, and a message from a man who refused to stay dead. Morning arrived not with sunlight, but with a gray heaviness that pressed itself against every window of the house. It felt like the sky itself was trying to warn me, quietly, urgently, that something was tightening around the edges of my life. I hadn't slept. The notebook rested beside me on the nightstand, its presence humming like a quiet threat. The words Marcus wrote lived inside me now, pulsing against every thought, every suspicion, every breath. 2 children, 1 truth, and a message that chose the word trust like it was a loaded weapon. I showered mechanically and dressed in soft gray, the color of neutrality, the color of someone who wasn't ready to pick a side but was already watching both. When I stepped into the hallway, the house felt observed, as if every wall had shifted slightly overnight, as if someone else had walked these floors while I tried to rest. I headed toward the kitchen. Halfway down the hall I paused. Jasmine was already there, sitting at the breakfast table with her laptop open, phone beside her, a half-drunk mug of coffee staring back at her like an unspoken confession. She wasn't dressed for comfort. She wore a fitted blouse, a neat bun, and the precise kind of subtle makeup someone wears when they're preparing to be seen, not to grieve. Her eyes snapped up at the sound of my steps too quickly, too aware, too focused. Good morning, she said, her voice pillowed with softness. I didn't expect you to be awake yet. Her laptop screen glowed on her face. White paper, documents, numbers. I approached slowly, glancing at the screen. She shifted her arm casually to cover part of it, an instinctive, unconscious gesture. What are you working on? What are you working on? I asked, keeping my tone light. She smiled, thin, practiced, the kind she used when she wanted something approved. Just organizing some things for Dad's accounts. I know it's early, but there's a lot to sort through. I don't want you overwhelmed. Overwhelmed. Protected. Sheltered. Words that used to feel like care now felt like manipulation. I poured myself coffee. My hands remained steady, even as my heart beat its own quiet warning. You were in the office last night, I said softly, not as an accusation, but a simple truth placed gently on the table. Her fingers paused on the keyboard. A small betrayal in muscle memory. She didn't look up. Yes, she admitted. I was. I shouldn't have. I know Dad didn't like anyone going in there. But I couldn't sleep and I just. She swallowed. Looked up finally. I wanted to feel close to him. A good answer. A believable one. But her pupils flickered with something far less fragile. What were you looking for? I asked, stirring my coffee. She inhaled sharply, beginning to deflect. I didn't. Before she could finish, the front door opened. A brisk, controlled movement. Footsteps down the hall. Caleb appeared, tie loosened, jacket slung over one shoulder, hair still damp from a hurried shower. Morning, he said, but his tone wasn't morning light or morning gentle. It was morning strained, morning suspicious, morning aware that too much was shifting too fast. His gaze swept the kitchen quickly, me, then Jasmine, then the laptop, then back to me. You 2 up early, he said. Everything okay? Jasmine closed her laptop a little too quickly. Caleb's eyes narrowed. I took a sip of my coffee. Yes, I said softly. Everything is settling. Caleb leaned against the counter, tapping his fingers slowly, thoughtfully. We need to talk to the he said. We can't just let things sit. The board is already asking what happens next. Jasmine stiffened. I told you last night, Caleb, give Mom some time. Time, he snapped. We don't have time. Dad left things a mess, and if we don't get ahead of it, he didn't leave things a mess, Jasmine shot back. You have no idea how he managed the accounts. You barely. Don't start, Caleb cut in sharply. Not today. Their voices collided, low but dangerous, like two storms determining how to break the same sky. I watched them both. Not as a mother, but as the woman Marcus had written to. A woman standing between loyalty and suspicion, forced to see every movement through a lens she never asked for. And then, the moment everything shifted, Caleb ran a hand through his hair, exhaling hard. Look, Dad trusted me with the company. He said I'd take over someday, he said. His gaze flickered to me, almost guilty. He said the transition would be smooth if anything ever happened. Jasmine's chair scraped sharply as she stood. No, she said angrily. He told me things too, Caleb. Things he didn't tell you. A quiet heaviness entered the room. The kind of weight that belongs to truth trying to claw its way out of someone's throat. What things? I asked quietly. Jasmine and Caleb exchanged a sharp, silent look. One filled with things I wasn't supposed to see. One that felt like a door slamming shut. Caleb exhaled and stepped toward the hallway. I have to get to the office. We'll talk later. He grabbed his keys and left before Jasmine could respond. The front door closed. Silence settled like dust. Jasmine sat back down slowly, eyes staring into her coffee. Her voice softened. Mom, there's something you should know, she whispered. When Dad started getting those calls, I heard things. Things he didn't want you to know. My pulse thudded. What calls? She looked up at me. Her eyes glistened with fear, not grief. Fear. The ones that made him pace the patio at night, she whispered. The calls where he thought you were asleep. I leaned forward. Jasmine, what calls? She lowered her voice even further. The threats, Mom. The warnings. The ones telling him to run before they took everything from him. The room tilted. My breath caught. Threats. Warnings. Run. This wasn't just about business. This was about survival. And Jasmine knew more than she had ever let on. She looked at me with a trembling confession resting behind her lips. A truth Marcus had once carried alone, now crawling its way to the surface through her voice. Mom, Dad wasn't planning to die. He was planning to disappear. Jasmine's words hung in the air like a thin thread pulled too tight, trembling between confession and fear. He wasn't planning to die. He was planning to disappear. That sentence didn't fall into the room gently. It landed like a stone dropped into deep water, sending quiet ripples through every corner of my mind. For a moment, neither of us moved. I watched her chest rise and fall, her fingers trembling against the handle of her mug. Jasmine, I said softly, tell me everything. She looked at me, really looked, searching my face for something, perhaps reassurance, perhaps absolution, perhaps permission to unburden herself. But her voice betrayed a fracture in her resolve. I only heard pieces, she whispered. He would step outside at night, pacing in the dark. He thought the rest of us were asleep, but I wasn't. Her gaze drifted toward the kitchen window, as if replaying memories etched into the glass itself. He kept saying someone was pressuring him, that he had to get ahead of things or it would all fall apart. She swallowed hard. And he said your name, Mom. Over and over, like you were the reason he had to make a decision quickly. My breath hitched. Why me? She looked down. Because whoever was after him, they threatened you. The room tilted. The floor seemed to shift. Threatened me? Marcus had never let danger cross the threshold of this home, not knowingly. If he'd been willing to fake his own death, then the threat must have been real enough to make him sacrifice everything else. But Jasmine wasn't finished. One night, she whispered, he dropped his phone on the patio. I picked it up for him. A message was still on the screen. She hesitated, then met my eyes. It said, give us the files or we take the wife. My coffee cup trembled in my hand, the liquid inside rippling like a fear I could no longer hide. Files. Threats. Disappear. The note at the funeral. It was all one story, just told through different mouths. I set the cup down slowly. And you never told me? Tears swelled in her eyes. I didn't know what to do. Dad told me to stay out of it. He said the less you knew, the safer you were. A harsh, quiet truth settled inside me. That had always been Marcus's logic: protection by exclusion, love through omission, safety through silence. And now that silence was turning into a map, I was being forced to walk blindfolded. Before I could respond, Jasmine's phone buzzed sharply on the table. She flinched and turned it over. A name glowed on the screen: Roth. My heart stopped for a moment. Roth, Marcus's oldest partner. The one who'd stood at the funeral with a face carved from stone. The one whose eyes kept scanning the crowd like a man waiting for something to go wrong. Don't answer it, I said gently. She nodded and silenced the call, but the tension in her hands told me the message behind that call wasn't just business. I leaned back slightly, studying her. Jasmine, are you involved in any of this? She shook her head fiercely. No. God, no. I just knew something was wrong. And Caleb. Her voice caught. She looked away. Her fingers entwined tightly with each other. I waited. Sometimes silence reveals more than interrogation. Finally, she whispered. Caleb knows more than he's saying. Way more. A deep, cold certainty spread through my chest. What did he do? She wiped her eyes and spoke in a trembling voice. He started meeting with Dad's partners months before he died. Without telling anyone. They made him promises about the company, about inheritance. He was obsessed with being ready to take over. Her breath shuddered. And then when Dad said he wanted to sell his stake and leave everything clean, that's when the threat started. My throat dried. Jasmine, are you saying they thought Caleb could replace your father in more ways than one? She nodded slowly. They used him, Mom. And he let them. The refrigerator hummed behind us. A mundane, steady sound in a kitchen where the air had turned heavy with truth. My mind began stitching together pieces from Marcus's notebook. One Hale will choose survival. One will try to save you. Was Jasmine the one trying to save me? Or was she admitting her part in this simply because she feared the consequences closing in? Before I could ask, she leaned forward, voice trembling. Mom, I think Caleb knows Dad isn't really dead. The words slammed into me like a wave. What? Her voice grew smaller. Think about it. Caleb pushed for the closed casket. He kept rushing everything. He keeps defending Roth. And yesterday, before the funeral, I heard him on the phone. He said, it's done. She won't ask questions. My breath froze. You, Jasmine whispered. A cold, hollow stillness wrapped itself around my spine. Caleb, my son by marriage. The boy I loved like my own. Involved. Complicit, threatened Marcus. And if he thought Marcus was alive, then he also thought I might know. And people willing to bury the truth are always willing to bury the one holding it. My voice dropped to barely a whisper. Jasmine, does Caleb know about the note? Her lips parted. Her eyes widened. No, he can't. You didn't tell him, right? I shook my head slowly. Good. One secret still belonged to me. Jasmine reached for my hand, gripping it with trembling fingers. Mom, I'm scared. And for the first time since Marcus's letter found my hand, I felt it. Not fear, but the weight of responsibility. I squeezed her hand gently. Jasmine, nothing happens next unless I say it does. Her breath quivered. What do you mean? I stood slowly, walking toward the window, watching the empty street outside. Silent. Still. Deceptively peaceful. Marcus had built a world on business. His enemies built theirs on threats. And his children were caught in between, one drowning, one reaching for air. It was time to stop being the bystander in my own story. Without turning around, I said quietly, it's time to find out which Hale Marcus warned me about. Behind me, Jasmine inhaled sharply. Mom, what are you going to do? The answer rose from a place in me I didn't know existed. A place shaped by truth, sharpened by betrayal, held steady by the note still hidden beneath my pillow. Whatever it takes, I whispered, to finish what your father started. The day pressed itself against the house with a brooding heaviness, as if the sunlight itself had chosen to keep a safe distance from whatever was unfolding behind my walls. The quiet carried an edge, thin, metallic, like something waiting to snap. I watched Jasmine gather her things, her hands still trembling from the confession she'd spilled only minutes earlier. She wasn't pretending anymore. The veneer, the careful poise, the calm inherited from Marcus, had cracked. Beneath it lived fear. Real fear. "Where are you going?" I asked softly. She hesitated by the doorway. "To take a walk. To clear my head. Maybe go to the church. I need to think." I nodded gently. "Stay in places where there are people, Jasmine. And don't answer calls you're unsure of." She gave a weak smile, one that revealed the little girl hiding behind the grown woman she had become. "I won't. I promise." When she left, the house swallowed me in silence. Not a peaceful silence. A calculating one. A silence that didn't come from absence, but from something waiting. I locked the door behind her. Every movement felt deliberate now, measured the way someone moves when they know eyes might be watching. I walked toward the living room, trying to steady my breath. But as I passed the mirror in the hall, I froze. Not because of my reflection, but because of what was behind me. A small red light. Blinking. A dot on the smoke detector above the stairs. My pulse jumped. Smoke detectors don't blink like that. Not the ones in this house. I stepped closer slowly, heart pounding. The device was new, too new. The model wasn't the one Marcus installed years ago. This one was sleek, unfamiliar, almost hidden against the ceiling, unless you were looking for it. And now I was. I reached for the step stool beside the laundry closet, climbed it carefully, and removed the cover. Inside, nestled in the wiring, was a tiny lens. A camera. My breath left my body in one sharp, icy exhale. Someone had been watching. Not just listening. Watching. Everything inside me tightened. Every mother's instinct, every wife's intuition, every sense of self-preservation rising to the surface like a tide. I stepped down, my hand steady now, not from calm but from focus. There is a clarity that comes when fear sharpens into purpose, when survival becomes something you can feel in your bones. I walked through the house slowly, eyes scanning every corner. The hallway lamp. The vent above the pantry door. The corner shelf in the guest room. 3 more blinking lights. 3 more cameras. Not random. Not cheap. Professionally hidden. Someone had been monitoring the Hale household. Watching conversations. Watching movements. Watching me. And the installation was recent. Weeks recent. Days recent. Possibly hours. My hands curled into fists. Marcus's notebook flashed through my mind. The names, the warnings, the word survival. And the line he wrote just before the list of suspects. "If they can't find me, they will watch you." A cold wave washed through my chest. Someone had moved their focus from Marcus to me. I picked up one of the detectors and slid it into a drawer. Then another. And another. Systematically. Quietly. Carefully. Once the 4th was in the drawer, I closed it softly, almost reverently, as if sealing away the gaze of an unwanted ghost. My phone buzzed on the counter. A text message. Picked it up. The sender was a number I didn't recognize. Unknown. "Stay calm. Don't remove any more devices. Act normal." My jaw clenched. Another buzz. Unknown. "We need to talk. Now." 3rd buzz. This time a single line that froze my blood. Unknown. "Grace, stop. It's me." I stared at the screen, breath trembling. Because the name that popped up next, after a pause that felt like the universe holding its breath, was not unknown anymore. The contact updated. A familiar name appeared, one I hadn't seen since the day he died. Hale. My husband. The man in the coffin. The man whose handwriting I'd held at the funeral. The man who'd warned me to. My heartbeat thundered against my ribs. Another message appeared. "Marcus, you're in danger. They're watching every corner of that house. Do not react. Do not run. Listen to me very carefully." The entire world shrank to the glowing screen in my hand. Air thinned. Walls seemed to lean inward. I typed with trembling fingers. "Where are you? How do I know this is real?" Immediate response. "Marcus, check behind the family portrait in the hallway." My throat tightened. I walked toward the portrait, our family vacation photo from Aspen. Marcus had insisted on framing it even though we all looked sunburned and exhausted. I lifted it from the nail. Behind it, taped to the wall, was a small envelope. My name on it. In his handwriting. Fresh ink. New tape. My knees weakened. I typed quickly. What's going on? Who put cameras here? Who is after me? His reply came within seconds. Marcus, the same people who threatened you before I disappeared. The people Caleb helped without knowing what he was walking into. My breath hitched. Another buzz. Marcus, you need to get Jasmine out of the house and stay calm until I tell you what to do next. Grace, trust me. For once, trust me. I sank down on the stairs, the envelope trembling in my hand, the phone glowing a warning across my palm. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. I didn't know whether this was salvation or the next step in an even bigger lie. But Act 4 wasn't about knowing. It was about choosing. And sitting there with my husband's words in one hand and my husband's text messages in the other, I understood something with terrifying clarity. This wasn't just a family secret anymore. It was a war. And I had just been pulled into the center of it. I sat frozen on the stairs, the envelope trembling between my fingers. The house around me felt different now. Not like a home's performance. A place where every breath might be watched, every movement interpreted, every silence mistaken for surrender. Marcus's text still glowed on the screen. You're in danger. They're watching every corner. Trust me. For once, trust me. For once. The irony cut deeper than any threat. I looked at the envelope again. Fresh tape, fresh ink. A message left inside my house after he died. Somehow, knowing he had been close enough to slip this behind the portrait, made my skin crawl and my heart ache in the same breath. I slid it open slowly. Inside was a folded sheet of paper, creased tightly, like someone had written it in haste. I unfolded it. Grace, if you're reading this, it means they've made their move. And they're closer than we planned for. Do not trust the systems in the house. Do not confront Caleb. And do not leave alone. My breath hitched. Closer than planned? Watching. Listening. I reread the lines, each one sinking deeper into my ribs. Then my phone buzzed again. Marcus. Grace, listen. I only have seconds before they switch frequencies. You need to go to the garage. Right now. Calmly. Behind the water heater there's a black duffel bag. Don't open it yet. A tremor shot through my chest. I glanced down the hallway, quiet still. No shadows shifting. No footsteps. Just silence waiting, coiled. I typed carefully. Marcus. Who is they? 3 dots appeared. Then vanished. Then reappeared. Marcus. The ones who helped me disappear. And the ones who want to make sure you don't start asking questions. The air left my lungs like a punch. The ones who helped him disappear? Something darker lurked between those words. He texted again. Marcus. Move. Now. I stood, forcing my legs to steady under me. Every instinct screamed to run, but running would draw attention. So I walked. Slowly. Quietly. Past the kitchen. Past the living room. Past the places where my life used to feel whole. I reached the garage door and slipped inside. The garage was dim, dust dancing in a soft shaft of light cutting through the window. Everything looked untouched. But looks were lies, and I knew that now. My gaze landed on the water heater tucked into the corner. I walked toward it, the concrete cold beneath my feet. Behind it, half buried beneath old paint cans and a coil of extension cords, was a black duffel bag. Heavy. Rectangular. I pulled it out slowly. The zipper glimmered faintly under the light. My phone buzzed before I touched it. Marcus. Grace, stop. Don't open it yet. I froze. Marcus. Someone is close. Too close. Put the bag back and walk away like you didn't notice it. A shadow drifted across the garage window. Soft. Slow. My throat locked. Marcus. Grace now. I shoved the bag back behind the heater, my breath shaking in my chest. I wiped the dust from my hands onto my dress and turned away just as the side door creaked open. I swallowed my gasp. Caleb stepped inside, his silhouette framed by the outside light. His expression was wrong. Not grief. Not confusion. Not even anger. He looked determined. He scanned the garage slowly, top to bottom, as if cataloging the room. His gaze paused near the heater. Lingering. Too long. I forced my voice steady. Caleb, what are you doing out here? He jumped slightly, caught off guard by my presence. Mom? I forgot something, he said, the words tumbling too quickly. A tool. I left my toolbox here the other day. I kept my face soft, careful. Oh, of course. He stepped deeper into the room, eyes darting. To the shelves. To the corner. Loudly, I wondered if he could hear it. His jaw tightened. His fingers flexed at his sides. He was looking for something. And I knew exactly what. I took a slow step back. I was just coming out to check the car. Found a strange noise when I drove it yesterday. He nodded absently. Distracted. His eyes still drifting toward the hidden bag. I reached for the doorknob. Let me know if you find what you're looking for. He didn't respond. He didn't look at me. He was too busy scanning the shadows. I slipped quietly back into the house. Closed the door gently. Locked it. My phone vibrated again the moment I turned the deadbolt. Marcus. He knows something is off. Do not confront him. Do not get angry. Do not ask questions. Just act like today is ordinary. I typed back. Marcus, is Caleb part of this? There was a long pause. Too long. Then, Marcus, one Hale will choose survival over truth. One will choose truth over survival. You need to decide which one he is before they do. My stomach twisted into knots. Marcus, Grace, I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to say next. 3 dots appeared. Then vanished. Then reappeared like he was fighting time itself. Marcus, everything that happens next will depend on how well you can pretend that you don't know anything. I closed my eyes, inhaling a shaky breath. Act 4 wasn't just rising tension anymore. It was the moment a woman realizes she is no longer in her own story. She is inside someone else's plan. And if she missteps even once, the wrong person will know she's finally awake. The house breathed around me like something alive, its walls holding secrets, its air shivering with tension I could feel along my skin. Marcus's final message still glowed faintly on my screen, a warning wrapped in urgency. Everything that happens next will depend on how well you pretend you don't know anything. Pretend. Act. Play along in a life I thought was mine, but was now revealed as someone else's battlefield. I slipped the phone into my pocket and walked into the living room. The curtains were half drawn, the morning light cutting sharp lines across the furniture. It felt like a spotlight and a crosshair at the same time. I breathed through the tremor in my hands and practiced the most dangerous thing I'd ever attempted. Normalcy. The front door opened. Caleb stepped inside. He paused when he saw me, shoulders tense, expression fixed in something between suspicion and forced warmth. Hey, he said too casually. You're still home. I smiled softly. Didn't feel like going anywhere. He nodded slowly, watching me with eyes that weren't trying to understand me anymore, but trying to calculate me. He took a step closer. Mom, you okay? A simple question. An innocent question. A deadly one. Jasmine's voice echoed in my mind. He knows more than he's saying. He was meeting with Dad's partners. He said. It's done. She won't ask questions. I forced a small, steady breath. I'm all right, sweetheart. Just trying to make sense of things. He nodded, still staring. Too hard. Too long. Listen, he said quietly. We should go over Dad's accounts today. Make sure no one tries to move anything behind our backs. A lie wrapped in loyalty's clothing. I kept my voice gentle. Of course. Later today. But his eyes narrowed, as if he could hear the edges of the truth beneath my calm. Before he could respond, the doorbell rang, sharp, abrupt, slicing through the stale tension like a blade. Caleb snapped to attention. I'll get it, he said quickly. He moved toward the door with a speed that felt defensive, as if he already knew who might be on the other side, as if someone had warned him to expect company. I stood still, heart pounding, eyes following the sharp lines of his body. He opened the door. Standing outside was Mr. Ellison, the family lawyer. His tie was crooked, his face pale. He looked nothing like the composed attorney who had handled Marcus's estate with quiet authority. He looked scared. Caleb, he said, breath tight. I need to speak with Grace. Alone. Caleb stiffened. That's not going to happen. Mr. Ellison swallowed hard. It has to. This concerns her safety. Safety. The word sliced through the air. I stepped forward. It's okay, Caleb. Let him in. He didn't move. Didn't blink. But after a long moment, he stepped aside reluctantly, jaw clenched. Ellison entered quickly, shutting the door behind him as though he feared someone else might follow him inside. He turned toward me with eyes that begged me not to speak yet. "Grace," he murmured. "We need to go somewhere private." Caleb took one step forward. "What is this about?" Ellison's voice cracked. "Not you." Caleb's jaw tightened. His nostrils flared. His hand curled slightly at his side, as if resisting the urge to grab something or someone. I walked toward Ellison, keeping my voice calm. "Let's go to the sunroom. It's quiet there." As we walked down the hall, I heard Caleb exhale sharply behind us. Not relief. Not fear. Annoyance. Suspicion. A calculation shifting. Ellison closed the sunroom door behind us. His hand shook as he pulled a small USB drive from inside his coat pocket. "Grace," he whispered urgently, "your husband contacted me." The world stilled. My breath caught. My pulse roared. Ellison continued. "Yesterday. Late. He told me to deliver this to you immediately. He said you'd know what to do with it." I stared at the drive, small, dark, harmless looking, but it with the way my heart reacted. "What's on it?" I whispered. Ellison swallowed. "Evidence. Real evidence. The kind that puts powerful men in prison for the rest of their lives. And Grace." He leaned closer. "Your stepson is involved." My knees nearly buckled. "He's been moving money on behalf of Roth and Lang," Ellison continued. "Whether he knows the full extent or not, I can't say. But he's been helping them cover their tracks." My stomach twisted into a painful knot. "Marcus told me," Ellison said, voice trembling, "that this USB might get you killed if it ended up in the wrong hands. Which means Caleb cannot know you have it." A cold shiver crawled down my spine. Everything Marcus warned me about, every instruction, every message, it was all tightening into a single truth. Someone in this house was not on my side. I took the USB carefully, as if holding a live flame. "What am I supposed to do with it?" Ellison exhaled shakily. "Marcus said the only safe place for it is where the truth can't be bought. The federal agent he's been working with, Rivera, will contact you by noon." I stiffened. "Rivera? That's the name in the notebook." He nodded. "Yes. He's real. And he's your husband's only shield." I looked down at the USB. It felt small in my hand, but the weight of what it carried pressed into my bones. Ellison touched my arm. "Grace, listen to me. Whatever happens next, don't let anyone know you have this. And don't trust." A loud crash echoed from the hallway. Both of us froze. The sunroom door burst open. Caleb stood there, chest heaving, eyes burning with something between betrayal and fury. He had heard everything. Time stilled. Air thinned. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "Mom," he whispered, voice trembling, "what did you just take from him?" I hid the USB behind me instinctively. "Caleb," I said softly, "just calm down." But calm had abandoned him. His chest rose and fell in sharp, violent breaths. His eyes darted between me and Ellison like a cornered animal choosing which threat to eliminate first. "You're lying to me," he said. "Both of you." He stepped deeper into the room. One step. Another. "Where is it?" he demanded. "Caleb, where is it?" His voice shattered against the walls. Marcus's warning rang through my skull. One Hale will choose survival over truth. And in that moment I knew which Hale he meant, and why Marcus had been so afraid. Caleb took one more step, and I backed away slowly, closing my fingers around the USB. "Sweetheart," I whispered, "listen to me." But he didn't hear me. He was too far gone. Too afraid of what the truth might reveal. Too invested in the lies he'd chosen to protect. The turning point had arrived. Not with a revelation. Not with a confession. But with a simple, devastating understanding. My own child. The boy I raised. The boy I loved. The boy I protected. Might be the doorway Marcus feared most. And in his eyes, the truth I carried wasn't salvation. It was a threat. A threat he might be willing to eliminate. Caleb stood in the sunroom doorway like a shadow that had finally stepped out of hiding. His chest heaved. His hands trembled. Not with fear, but with a dangerous blend of desperation and entitlement. The boy I once helped with homework, the boy who called me mom long before he meant it, now stared at me like I was the single obstacle between him and survival. The USB pulsed like a heartbeat against my palm, hidden behind my back. Ellison hovered beside me, frozen. Not brave enough to confront Caleb, not foolish enough to leave. The sunlight from the windows spilled across the room, illuminating particles of dust drifting in slow motion, stretching into a strange, suspended moment where everything felt fragile, like the next breath might shatter the entire world. "Caleb," I said softly, "please, let's talk." He shook his head slowly, his voice cracking at the edges. "Mom, you're making a mistake. Mom." Even now, he used the word as a weapon, as if reminding me of our bond might soften my determination. But something had shifted inside me, something quiet, steady, unyielding. Fear had been replaced by clarity. Every truth Marcus had hidden was now a shape I could finally see. "What mistake?" I asked gently, inching backward toward the far end of the room. Caleb's eyes flicked to Ellison, then to my hands, trying to guess where I'd hidden the evidence. "You're choosing Dad's lies over your own family," he said, voice trembling. "You're trusting men who used him. You're trusting people who threatened you." I inhaled slowly. "I'm trusting the truth." His face twisted, not in anger but in pain. The truth? Or Dad's story of it? He took another step. And another. Ellison shifted nervously but remained silent, fragile like a man standing in the path of a storm. Caleb continued, his voice low and raw. "Do you know what Roth told me? That Dad was going to leave us with nothing. That he was going to sell the company, drain the accounts, disappear, and start a new life without any of us." I blinked. "You believed that?" His jaw tightened. "Why wouldn't I? He stopped trusting me. He stopped trusting all of us. He kept saying the business was corrupt, that he was being targeted. But he wouldn't explain anything. He shut me out." In his voice I heard it. Not a criminal's hunger, but a boy's devastation. Fear disguised as ambition. Hurt disguised as betrayal. "I didn't want to be part of anything illegal," Caleb whispered. "But Roth said if Dad handed in those files, everyone connected to the company, including us, would be ruined. Legally. Financially. Everything gone." His gaze locked onto mine. "Mom, I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to protect us." I felt my throat tighten. There it was, the truth inside the lie. Caleb hadn't begun as an enemy. He'd been manipulated, groomed by men who knew just how to twist loyalty into a weapon. Marcus wasn't the only one they'd cornered. Caleb had been cornered too, by fear, by promises, by the terror of losing everything. But fear can turn good people dangerous. "Sweetheart," I whispered, stepping slowly to the side, "your father didn't want to disappear from us. He wanted to disappear from them." Caleb flinched. A single crack in his certainty. "He left evidence," I continued. "Not to destroy the family, but to save it. To save you and Jasmine from being tied to criminals. He left us in the dark." Caleb snapped. "He left me carrying the weight of decisions I didn't understand. And now you're choosing him over me." "That's not true." "It is true," he shouted, voice breaking. "You'd rather believe a ghost than listen to the sun standing right in front of you." Ellison stepped forward timidly. "Caleb, your father told me you didn't know the full picture." Caleb turned on him sharply. "And you? Who are you loyal to? Us? Or him?" Ellison faltered, words caught in his throat. Silence answered for him. Caleb exhaled shakily, as if something inside him was crumbling. "I didn't want any of this. I didn't know Roth and Lang would push Dad this far. I didn't know they'd." He caught himself. "Too late." "You didn't know they'd what?" I asked softly. His jaw quivered. "I didn't know they'd actually try to kill him," he whispered. The room fell silent. A silence so sharp it felt like glass shattering underfoot. Caleb cracking. "I thought they were bluffing. I thought Dad could talk himself out of anything. I didn't think," he choked. "I didn't think they'd follow through." I felt my breath freeze inside me. Caleb opened his eyes again, haunted, lost, desperate. "Mom, if you give them that drive, it's over for me. They'll say I was part of it. They'll take me down with them. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." His tears finally broke, sliding silently down his face. A boy, not a man. A son, not an enemy. Someone who had been standing in a storm he didn't understand. "I didn't know," he whispered again. "I swear to you, I didn't know." My chest ached. Because I believed him. Because fear had shaped him the way survival shaped Marcus. Because love and betrayal sometimes wear the same voice. Ellison stepped forward carefully. Caleb, help your mother. Help us expose them. You can still choose the right side. Caleb wiped his face with a trembling hand. His breathing was ragged, shallow. But his eyes, when he met mine again, held something different now. A flicker of the boy he once was. A flicker of truth. What do you want me to do? He whispered. I stepped toward him slowly, gently, and placed a hand on his cheek. Choose what your father hoped you'd become, I said softly. Not what those men tried to turn you into. Caleb closed his eyes. A single tear fell. His shoulders sagged in surrender. I'll help, he whispered. Just, please don't let them take me. I won't, I said. Not if you stand with me now. At that moment the sunroom air shifted, no longer heavy with confrontation, but with possibility. With the fragile first breath of redemption. Caleb wasn't the Hale Marcus warned me about. He was the one who'd been trying to survive, caught in the crossfire of power and fear. And as he finally stepped into the light of truth, I understood the reflection of this act fully. This war wasn't about sides. It was about saving the people who still had something left worth saving. The sun slipped lower in the sky, casting a muted gold across the sunroom glass. Outside, the world moved with its typical indifference, a breeze stirring the hedges, a passing car rolling by, a dog barking somewhere down the street. But inside the Hale household, time didn't move forward, it held its breath. Caleb stood in front of me, shoulders trembling, the weight of confession clinging to him like a second skin. Gone was the rigid posture, gone was the suspicion carved into his jaw. Now he looked like what he truly was, a frightened young man caught in a machine built from ambition, legacy, and a kind of danger he was never meant to handle. Ellison hovered by the window, hands shaking as he wiped his glasses with a cloth that had been clean once, but now bore streaks of anxiety. I remained still, grounding myself, letting the gravity of Act 6 settle before the resolution could begin. Everything had shifted, and yet nothing was resolved. Caleb's voice broke the fragile silence. What happens now? The question was simple, but behind it pulsed a deeper one. What happens to me? I stepped closer, my voice steady. Now we protect the truth. And we protect each other. He swallowed, struggling with the duality of guilt and relief. Mom, Roth and Lang, they won't stop. If they think the files are out, they'll... I know, I said gently. What if it's already too late? He whispered. I exhaled slowly. It's only too late if we run from the truth. And we're done running. His gaze softened, but the fear didn't disappear. It settled into him like a trembling echo. I'll help. I'll do whatever you need me to. It wasn't a pledge of bravado or false courage. It was the voice of someone finally surrendering to the truth. That mattered more than anything. Ellison cleared his throat. We need to think strategically. Rivera, the federal agent Marcus trusted, is expecting contact by noon. He checked his watch. He'll reach out any moment. Caleb stiffened at the name, but not with defiance. This time with fear of what the law might think of him. Listen to me, Ellison said, voice trembling but firm. If you cooperate, if you come forward willingly, Rivera can protect you. He can separate you from Roth and Lang. But if they get to him before we do... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I stepped toward the window, peering through the slits of the curtain. The street looked ordinary, but ordinary was always where danger preferred to hide. The house's stillness felt like a fragile shell. One wrong movement could shatter it. Where's Jasmine? I asked softly. Caleb looked up as if remembering for the first time. His breath hitched. She said she was going to church. To clear her head. And her phone. She turned it off after Roth kept calling. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. If Roth had been calling Jasmine too, we need to bring her home, I said. Now. Ellison nodded. But carefully. If someone's watching the house. They are, I interrupted. Marcus found cameras placed here recently. Caleb's face drained of color. See cameras? Here. I nodded. Someone's been monitoring us. Listening. Watching. He ran a shaking hand through his hair. Oh God. I didn't know. I swear I didn't. I never. I know, I said quietly. I believe you. The boy inside the man exhaled in relief. But relief was fragile in a storm like this. We need to dismantle those cameras, Ellison said nervously. No, I replied. Removing them alerts our enemies. Marcus already warned me. We notify Rivera first. Then we act. Jasmine home without raising suspicion. You'll text her. Something normal. Something routine. Caleb nodded, pulling his phone from his pocket. His fingers hovered over the screen, trembling. What should I say? Tell her we're having dinner early, I said. Tell her you're picking up food. Make it sound like a typical family evening. He typed slowly, choosing every word with care. Hey Jazz, grabbing dinner early. Mom wants you back soon. Everything's okay, just come home when you can. He hit send. We waited. Seconds felt like minutes. Minutes felt like hours. Then her reply buzzed through the room. Okay, leaving now. For the first time since morning, I breathed. She's coming home, Caleb whispered. Good, Ellison murmured, though his hands still shook. As we stood in tenuous hope, my phone vibrated sharply. A number flashed on the screen, unknown but with a federal prefix. My pulse quickened. I answered. A man's voice spoke, low, calm, steady, the type of voice trained to speak in storms. Grace Hale. Yes, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. This is Agent Rivera. I'm calling on behalf of your husband. The room went still. Caleb looked at me. Ellison paled. Yes, I said. I've been waiting. Rivera continued, each word measured. Ma'am, we need to move quickly. Your location is compromised. Your husband gave us limited time before surveillance shifts. I need you to follow my instructions exactly. My throat tightened. What do I do? You have the USB. Correct. Yes. Good. That drive cannot fall into the wrong hands. And right now you're not safe inside that house. None of you are. I swallowed. My daughter is on her way home. Rivera paused. Then we need to move before she gets there. We can't have her walking into an unsafe environment. What are you saying? I'm sending a secure vehicle to pick all three of you up, he said. You'll be transported to a safe location. From there, you can decide whether to cooperate with our investigation. Caleb stiffened. He wants me to turn myself in. Rivera seemed to sense his panic. If the young man chooses honesty, he will be protected, he said gently. If he chooses lies, the people he's aligned with won't protect him for long. Caleb's breath trembled, but he nodded silently. When is the vehicle coming? I asked. Within 10 minutes, Rivera replied. Grace, stay calm. Do not leave the house alone. And do not open the door unless the code phrase is spoken. What phrase? He whispered it clearly. Every detail deliberate. Every syllable sharp with meaning. A code only Marcus could have given him. Grace. Rivera said softly. Do you trust me? I closed my eyes. Did I? I thought of Marcus's notebook. His warnings. His fear. His desperate attempts to protect us from the shadows he had spent years fighting alone. And now one truth rose above all the others. Trust wasn't a feeling anymore. It was a choice. Yes, I said quietly. I trust you. Good, Rivera replied. We're coming. The line clicked off. The room held a new kind of tension now, purposeful, urgent, heavy with the gravity of a family standing on the threshold of redemption or ruin. Caleb inhaled tremulously. Mom, are we doing the right thing? I took his hand gently. We're doing the only thing that keeps us alive. Outside, a faint rumble echoed down the street. A vehicle approaching. Inside, the air thickened, knowing that whatever came next would shape how the truth finally broke open. The controlled, approaching the house with the kind of precision that didn't belong to neighbors or delivery trucks. It was the sound of inevitability, a low, deliberate rumble threading itself through the quiet tension of the Hale home. Caleb stood by the window, shoulders stiff, eyes fixed on the street with a mixture of dread and longing. Ellison hovered behind him, wringing his hands as though trying to squeeze the fear out of his bones. I stayed centered in the room, grounding myself in a way I hadn't known I could. The air felt different, tighter, like the house itself held its breath in anticipation of whatever waited beyond those walls. Mom, Caleb whispered, what if this is a trap? It was a valid fear. When the world becomes this layered, this twisted, this fragile, every sound feels like a warning, every choice feels like a gamble. But truth has a strange way of guiding the feet of those who finally choose to follow it. We listen for the code phrase, I said softly. We trust the plan. We trust Marcus. And we trust the truth. My phone buzzed. A text from Jasmine. Almost home. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. 5 minutes to survive the next 5 decades. I typed back quickly, come straight inside. Don't stop for anything. Her reply came instantly. Okay. Caleb turned from the window, fear flickering across his face. If Roth's people get here first. I touched his arm gently. They won't. He swallowed hard. How do you know? I looked him in the eyes, the way a mother looks at her child 2 moments before she breaks herself open for them. Because I'm done letting them control this family. The room fell silent. Outside, the vehicle slowed. A sleek black SUV stopped at the curb, its windows tinted, engine purring like something coiled and ready. A man stepped out, tall, plainclothed, the quiet kind of confident. He approached the house. Caleb tensed. Ellison backed away from the doorway as if the floor beneath him had grown teeth. Then, 3 knocks. Steady. Calculated. Steady. Calculated. Measured. My pulse thudded painfully. I approached the door, every step careful, every breath controlled. Who is it? I asked through the wood, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. A moment of silence. Then the man's voice. The mountains look quiet tonight. The code phrase. Relief flooded my chest like warm light seeping through cracks. I opened the door. The man nodded once. His eyes scanned the room instantly, taking in Caleb, Ellison, the tension woven into every corner. Agent Rivera, he said quietly. Your husband sent me. Caleb stiffened at the word husband, as if hearing Marcus's name spoken through a stranger's mouth made the situation more real, more raw. Rivera stepped inside, closing the door behind him. He kept his posture relaxed, but his eyes were sharp, constantly assessing, constantly reading the room. We need to leave, Rivera said. Now. Before we could respond, another sound cut through the tension. A car screeching around the corner. Rivera's hand moved instantly toward his jacket, not pulling a weapon but ready. Caleb's eyes widened. Is that? Another car. Then another. 3 engines. Fast. Aggressive. Wrong. Rivera's face hardened. We've been compromised. The house seemed to inhale sharply. What do we do? Ellison whispered, voice breaking. Stay calm, Rivera murmured, stepping deeper into the room, positioning himself between us and the danger. You 3 behind me. Away from the windows. We moved quickly, hearts racing, breaths shallow. Outside, doors slammed. Footsteps. More than 1. More than 2. A chorus of danger assembling itself outside my home. Rivera lowered his voice. They must have intercepted our route. Someone on the inside tipped them off. Caleb's face collapsed. It has to be him. He's been watching the house. I whispered. Jasmine is almost home. Rivera's eyes hardened. We need to get her inside. Now. He moved toward the door, but before he reached it, Jasmine's car turned onto the street. And oh, Caleb breathed. Everything happened at once. Rivera swung the door open. Jasmine inside. Now. She looked up, confused, slowing her car. Then she saw the 3 black cars. Her eyes widened. Jasmine! Caleb yelled, rushing forward. Run! Jasmine flung her door open, stumbling onto the driveway, scanning wildly for the danger she could sense but not see clearly. One of the black car doors burst open. A man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, purpose in his stride. Rivera reacted instantly. Inside. Go get her. Caleb didn't think. He moved. Fast. Faster than I'd ever seen him move. He sprinted toward Jasmine, grabbed her hand, and pulled her behind him as the strange man advanced. Get inside. Caleb shouted. She stumbled, panicked, confused. What's happening? Move, he yelled. Rivera stepped forward, blocking the man's path. Back off, he barked. Federal authorization. Do not approach. The man smirked. You think they sent only me? And then, 2 more stepped out of the cars behind him. My breath caught. Rivera's eyes stayed calm. You 3 inside. Now. Caleb dragged Jasmine through the doorway, slamming it shut behind them. Her chest heaved, her eyes wide with terror. What is going on? I pulled her close. You're safe. You're home. Outside. The men approached the house. Rivera stood firm. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Marcus. Grace, listen to me. Don't panic. Don't move them. Now. Another message. Whatever happens, stay calm. It's almost over. Almost over. Rivera's voice boomed outside. You don't want to do this. But the men stepped closer. One reached for his coat. The implication was enough. Rivera moved with lightning precision. Hand to his radio, voice sharp, backup compromised. Immediate assistance needed. Code red, protect the family. He didn't wait for the response. He stepped between the men and the house, bracing for whatever came next. Caleb pressed Jasmine behind him protectively. Ellison crouched in the corner, trembling. I stood tall, still clutching the USB in my pocket like the truth itself. We all listened. To the footsteps outside. To the tension crackling through the air. To the moment fate bends its knee. Then, the sound nobody expected. A single car speeding down the street. Fast. Reckless. A voice calling out. Loud, raw. Recognizable even through the chaos. Get away from my family. The tires screeched to a stop. The door flew open. And the man who stepped into the middle of the street was Marcus. Alive. Breathing. Burning with purpose. He stood between danger and home, eyes locked on the men who had hunted him for months. And in that single instant, the world, the lies, the secrets, the shadows, collapsed into truth. Real truth. Act 8 closed like a flame. As my husband, the man I grieved, the man who warned me, the man who disappeared to save us, finally came back to finish what he started. Marcus stood in the center of the street like a man who had risen from his own ashes, every shadow that had haunted the past months burning off him as he faced the 3 men who had tried to bury him in lies, threats, and silence. His chest rose and fell with controlled precision, calm, focused, alive in a way I had never seen before. For a moment everything stilled. The wind stopped breathing. The world paused between heartbeats. And time waited for what Marcus Hale would do next. Rivera stepped back, shifting smoothly to Marcus's side like a soldier falling into formation with the general who just returned from the dead. The men from Roth's side flinched, not from fear of Marcus alone, but from seeing the one truth they thought they'd buried standing upright before them. You should have stayed gone, one of them spat. Marcus tilted his head, voice low and steady. I never left. A ripple of dread ran through their ranks. One stepped forward aggressively, hand shifting toward his coat. Marcus didn't move, but Rivera did, one clear, commanding gesture that froze the man mid-reach. You're surrounded, Rivera said coldly. Keep your hands visible. But the men didn't back down. The one in front sneered. You were supposed to disappear quietly, Marcus. That was the deal. And your family was supposed to follow instructions. His eyes drifted toward our house. Rage surged through me, hot and unforgiving. I tightened my grip on the USB in my pocket, the weight of it like a final verdict. Marcus's gaze flicked toward the house, toward me, just for a breath but enough for my entire soul to steady. He turned back to the man. No more deals. The street erupted. 2 things happened at once. Rivera lunged forward, pushing Marcus back. And the man closest to Marcus reached for something inside his jacket. But before anything could escalate, a chorus of sirens broke through the tension, slicing through the air like a blade. Police cruisers, federal vans, unmarked sedans, all barreling down the street with a force that left no question. Rivera had called in backup the moment the situation turned. The men froze. Their confidence broke. Their moment was over. Officers swarmed the block, shouting commands, weapons drawn but controlled. One by one, the men surrendered, their arrogance dissolving into despair as they realized they were no longer the hunters. They were the hunted. As they were handcuffed and read their rights, Marcus stepped toward the house, slowly, carefully, as though afraid that if he moved too quickly, this fragile miracle might crack and crumble. Caleb opened the door first. The moment his eyes found Marcus, truly found him, his breath left his body in a sound that wasn't a sob, wasn't a gasp, but something caught between the two. He stepped forward, tears spilling silently, shame and relief colliding in his chest. I'm sorry, Caleb whispered. Dad, I'm so sorry. Marcus stopped in front of him, eyes softening at the brokenness he saw in his son. He placed a hand on Caleb's shoulder. "You didn't know," he said quietly. "You trusted the wrong people. But you didn't know." Caleb collapsed into his father's arms and Marcus held him, not as a judge, but as a father reclaiming something he thought he'd lost. Jasmine rushed outside next. She didn't speak. She threw her arms around Marcus in one trembling motion, clinging to him like a child who'd found the parent she feared she'd lost forever. Marcus held her too, pressing his forehead gently against hers. "You're safe," he whispered. "You're all safe." And then, his eyes lifted to mine. Everything in my chest untangled. Every question, every wound, every doubt melted into something deeper than relief and stronger than joy. Love. The kind that survives storms. He walked toward me, slow but certain, like a man returning to the center of his own heartbeat. When he stood before me, the world fell away. "Grace," he breathed, eyes shining. "You saved them." I shook my head, tears slipping free. "No, Marcus, you brought us back to the truth." But his eyes searched mine with something heavier, regret. "I should have told you everything sooner," he whispered. "I should have trusted you from the start." "You did," I said softly, placing a hand over his. "You trusted me the moment you slipped that note into my hand." His forehead pressed to mine, breath warm and trembling. "You were my only safe place," he murmured. "You still are." For a long moment we simply held on to each other, two souls battered by lies and loss, reunited by truth's final insistence. Behind us, officers led the men away. Rivera approached, giving a respectful nod. "You did well, both of you. This could have gone a lot worse." Marcus extended his hand. Rivera shook it with a quiet look of respect. "We'll need statements," Rivera said. "All of you. But the immediate danger is over." The immediate danger, but not the emotional reckoning. Inside the house, we gathered in the living room, exhaustion settling on all of us like dust after an earthquake. Caleb and Jasmine sat close, clinging to each other not out of fear, but out of a desire to rebuild something fragile but real. Marcus sat beside me, fingers intertwined with mine. The weight of truths unspoken lingered. He turned, voice low. "I hurt you by leaving the way I did. Even if I meant to protect you, I hurt you." I nodded slowly. "You did." He swallowed hard. "Can you forgive me?" Forgiveness isn't a door. It's a bridge. And some bridges need time to rebuild. I leaned into him gently. "We'll heal," I whispered. "Together." Caleb looked at us, eyes red. "What happens now?" Marcus tightened his hold on my hand. "Now we rebuild our family on truth, not fear." Jasmine breathed out a fragile laugh. "It'll be messy." For the first time since his return, Marcus smiled. "Messy is honest." I rested my head on his shoulder, feeling the warmth of his presence, the certainty of his heartbeat, birth of safety. Act 9 closed not with perfection, but with peace beginning to bloom from the cracks. And that was enough. In the beginning, I stood at my husband's funeral holding a note that shattered everything I believed. In the end, I stood in my living room with the man I thought I'd buried, watching truth rise from the ruins of every lie. Life didn't give me back the world I lost, but it gave me a new one, built from survival, honesty, and love that refused to stay dead. And sometimes that is the greatest resurrection of all.